You know what takes up a ton of space in a pop-up camper? This stove. And honestly, we're not going to use it. So today I'm removing the indoor stove completely and building a brand new countertop to give us way more usable space inside this camper. This is actually a pretty easy DIY project that will make a huge difference. Okay, so we haven't actually used this camper yet, but to prep for our first camping trip, I'm making some modifications and starting with removing this stove. The camper came with the standard fold-down stovetop built right into the counter. And while it's a cool feature in theory, in reality, we'll be doing most of our cooking outside anyway. So if we do decide to cook indoors for some reason, we already have a super portable camping stove that we can move inside and set right on the new counter. Meanwhile, this thing takes up valuable prep space and it makes the counter feel really cramped, and I think it will just get in the way. So instead of keeping something we're barely going to use, we decided to trade it for something we will use every trip, which is more countertop space. And if you camp with kids, you know that every square inch matters. Now, obviously, anytime you're dealing with propane, make sure the propane is shut off completely before touching anything. In our camper, the stove had a propane fitting underneath that needed some muscle to remove. So I called Russ in and he used 2 crescent wrenches to remove this fitting. One to hold the fitting and the other to unscrew it. The stove also had a few mounting screws holding everything in place. Once those were removed, the whole stove lifted right out, and immediately the camper already felt bigger. It's kind of amazing how much space this little stove actually consumed. We've also heard from other people with these stoves that using all 3 burners at once is cramped and almost impossible anyway, unless you have teeny pans. So for us, it just felt even more useless. If you have something like this, let me know what you think in the comments. Now, removing the stove leaves a pretty awkward opening in the countertop. So the next step was figuring out what we wanted the new layout to be. I decided to replace the countertop completely, so the next step was removing the sink and faucet. There were some bolts and wing nuts that I loosened from underneath, and then the sink just kind of popped out. I decided to replace the countertop instead of just patching the hole because it would definitely look cleaner, it would be stronger, and it really wasn't more work. For material, you could use plywood with laminate, a butcher block, lightweight MDF with veneer, or even a pre-finished countertop material. But I went with plywood because I found a piece in my garage. It's lightweight, and I knew I could paint it to match the other counters in the camper. I was able to keep the plumbing connected to the sink, which made the reinstall a lot quicker. I was really tempted to buy a new sink and sleek new faucet, but really there's no need, and I'm trying to keep this project a low-cost modification. While I was in there, a rain cloud passed over and not only rained, but hailed. It is raining, raining, raining. You hear that? Yeah, I am. I'm looking for leaks. I don't see any. But luckily we had no leaks or feel any. And then shortly after that, the sun came out. Ah, spring weather. I started by using the old countertop as a template. That made it way easier to transfer the shape and dimensions onto the new material.
No, wait.
What?
You're not gonna do the sink opening?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, new piece of wood.
Dum-de-dum-dum. Then I cut everything out using a circular saw and rounded the edges with a router. If you don't have a router, you could sand the edges to remove the sharp corners. I could not find our jigsaw, so once again, Russ came to the rescue. I had found this piece in the garage and it had a few holes and other scrapes in it, so I used some wood filler and filled those up and then sanded them all smooth. Then came my first attempt at painting the counter. I had to admit it was looking way, way, way ugly. The colors were terribly wrong, so I decided to just blend them all together and smooth it out. After a quick test fit, things were looking good. Now, depending on your camper, you may have to cut openings for the sink, the lift system access, or storage compartments underneath. So definitely check all your clearances before securing everything down. We took another small piece of the counter with us to shop for new paint. I ended up getting 4 tubes of acrylic from a craft store that matched the various splotches on the counter pattern. I also purchased some sponges for some old school faux painting techniques. Okay, so we're gonna dip like the edges in the 4 different colors. Okay, come around on this side so you can reach. Okay, and then you kind of just like move it around and splat. Okay. You don't want to drag it because then it'll just smush all the colors together.
So like this?
Yep.
Is this good?
Yeah, good job. Painting was a great way to get the kids involved. There really wasn't much they could mess up that couldn't be fixed, and they were proud that they could help build it. One thing I really liked about this project was getting the kids involved. It reminded me that sometimes the goal isn't just the finished project, it's the time spent building something together. It actually made me think of Psalm 127 verse 1. Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. And no, I don't think this verse is talking about countertops in a camper, but I do think it's a reminder that the things we build together as a family, the memories, the time, the relationships, they matter more than the project itself. I secured the countertop into place using screws from underneath. I then added 3 coats of water-based top coat to protect this surface from scrapes and scratches. I set the sink in its spot and reused the bolts and wing nuts to hold it down, as well as some silicone. I put the faucet back in and I was done. This completely transformed the space. What used to be a cramped cooking area now feels way more open and functional. We now have extra prep space, room for a coffee maker, storage area, or honestly just a place to set stuff without fighting around that stove. Now technically we could still cook inside using a portable camp stove if we ever needed to. But for us, cooking outside keeps heat, grease, smells, and moisture out of the camper. And it just makes a lot more sense for how we'll camp. And that's it, a super simple modification, and honestly made this camper feel way bigger and more functional for our family. Sometimes the best upgrades aren't adding things, they're removing things you never actually use. If you enjoyed this project, I've got more pop-up camper upgrades and DIY builds coming soon here on Mission DIY. So make sure to subscribe and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.